Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
Well, welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant, where we delve into the latest strategies and innovations in the tax and accounting industry. My name is Lee Reams, and I'm your host and moderator. I'm the founder of CountingWorks Pro and our TaxBuzz.com professional marketplace. Today, we're excited to have Rebekah Barton join us, a seasoned expert in harnessing the power of social media to elevate the presence of tax and accounting firms. Today's topic is social media mastery for tax and accounting firms with Rebekah Barton. And with that, Rebekah, can you say hello before we get started here?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to talk about this today. I hope it helps you.
Yeah, and Rebekah is the Chief Visibility Officer here at CountingWorks Pro. So she is an absolute expert in everything from writing copy to amplifying your message and your branding, your talking points on social media. So she has an extensive background working with our large tax and accounting base, also has worked with consumer brands like Disney and had a lot of fun making things go viral. So Rebekah, let's get into this a little bit. And I want to start why you think tax and accounting professionals should actually care about social media and put the time in. So let's just start there and kind of give a base for what we're talking about today.
Sure. So I think that sometimes tax and accounting professionals don't realize that social can help them. I think they think of it, when I work with our clients, a lot of times they think of social as something for retail brands or people who are trying to sell a physical product and use like a storefront on Instagram or TikTok. But in reality, it's a great way to get your message out there to appeal to younger people. I'm a millennial, and Gen Z is now coming up needing help with taxes as they enter the workforce. And a lot of them have side gigs and are entrepreneurs. And it's a really good way to reach younger clients who can help your firm grow over time, because that's where we're looking. We're on social. We're not necessarily Googling. We're getting on Insta or TikTok to find service providers.
Well, that sounds a little bit overwhelming, but let's talk about that then from your standpoint of establishing yourself as a social media player. So like your brand, is it your practice? Am I establishing myself as a partner, as a CPA or an enrolled agent? Kind of give me an idea of, where do you get started as far as like branding, company, like practice versus individual?
Absolutely. And it can kind of go either way. So when I talk to our clients, some of them already have a presence as themselves, as an enrolled agent or a CPA. They've done interviews, they've worked with other local businesses as an individual. So if you don't really have a social media presence, the first thing you need to do is sit down and say, okay, do I want this to be my firm or do I want this to be me? If you already have a little bit of a following in one regard or the other, I always tell people to take where you have the largest following and run with it. So if you have more of a personal following and you've already been posting kind of professional content, take that and morph it into a fully professional profile that you can use to reach clients. If, on the other hand, your firm already has a little bit more of a following and you have people who already work with you who are following you on social, but you just haven't really been keeping up with it or haven't been doing a lot, take that profile and try to make it more robust and start posting more content there. So it kind of depends on the firm. Either can definitely work depending on who you are and what your existing following is.
All right. So that gives me an idea of, who the persona is, but how do I decide, am I jumping on YouTube and doing videos? Am I doing TikTok? Am I doing Instagram? Am I doing Facebook? How do you decide? LinkedIn, obviously. How do you decide where to concentrate? I think it's difficult to manage too many brands or too many social accounts at one time. So how do you kind of focus people on where they should be?
Yes. So there are a few different things I tell people to think about. I've been having a lot of social conversations lately with clients, which is kind of where this podcast came from. And one of the things we've been talking about is knowing your demographic. Different social media platforms have different demographics. If you're trying to reach baby boomers, for example, who need retirement help, that sort of thing, TikTok probably isn't your platform. You're probably going to want to be on Facebook, be on LinkedIn, places where those people are. If, on the other hand, you're trying to reach, Gen Z content creators, TikTok is definitely going to be your bread and butter. So really think about who it is you want to reach and don't bite off more than you can chew. Like you said, Lee, 1 or 2 profiles that you're really honed in on is all you really need to help grow your firm if they're focused on the right demographic and the right people.
Got it. So let's say now I've decided where I want to go, what accounts I want to target. I think the next thing is, how do I establish myself as an authority, some credibility? I know you often talk about some social proof testimonials. When I'm just getting started, what type of content, should I seed it with some client testimonials and case studies to kind of say, hey, I know what I'm talking about, and then go into different content creation, or kind of what are your strategies with that?
Yeah, so you don't want to overuse testimonials at first because that's boring, right? People don't want to see that day in and day out. So what I usually tell people, if you have an existing profile and you're wanting to curate it, you're wanting to make it better, you're wanting to make it more professional, more engaging, go through and do an audit. Assess what you already have, archive posts that don't fit your current brand or your current goals, and leave things that do fit your current goals. If you don't have a profile and you're starting a new one, seeding content is definitely helpful. I usually tell people don't go in with fewer than 12 posts when you start, you're going to want to put up 12 posts over a day or two, just to make the grid look a little better, to make your TikTok look like there's actually been some activity, or your Instagram, or even your Facebook wall. 8 to 12 is kind of industry standard for starting a new profile, and vary that content. So include 2 or 3 testimonials, include 2 or 3 educational pieces, include 2 or 3 things that are maybe tips or tricks or something people wouldn't know about your firm. If you're really focused on local content, you could even do a couple of posts about things you've done in the local community. If you sponsor a float in a local parade that's a big deal, or you have a booth at a festival that's upcoming, things like that can work really well for local content. And then the algorithms will typically push those out to people in your area as well if you geotag them, which can be a really good way to start to build credibility in your local area.
So I think you're leading into showing off some personality, being authentic. And I think a lot of times people think, there's a formula on what's going to get me followers, what's going to get me interactivity. I think that overall, people that are more authentic and don't feel like they're faking it as much, perhaps do better. Explain how you talked about setting up your profile. So should it follow similar branding and color schemes of your website and your firm brand? How do you then start showing some personality from this stage, not just what you're doing? So I like the 8 to 12. Let's seed this thing with different types of content, but what should it look consistent? Are the graphics kind of similar? Is there color schemes, whatever you're doing? How do you start establishing that in the social accounts as well?
Definitely. So to answer your question, yes, it should follow the branding that you've already been using. All of your branding across the board should be consistent. So if you have colors that you've been using, use those same colors when you do posts. If you have, certain words, buzzwords that you've used a lot, or certain services they are offering that you've really been pushing, like virtual CFO services, make sure you get those things that you've currently been pushing to your clients into your social profile. You want it to be an extension of your existing brand. So think about the personality that your brand has, or that you want your brand to have. And then every time you do marketing, or every time you post a piece of social content, kind of go through a checklist in your head and think, does this tick the boxes that are most important to me? Lee, I know often you'll talk about, branding as a political campaign. Have those 3 things, those 3 talking points that you just hammer, hammer, hammer. That can be a really good rule of thumb with social and with branding in general. If you have 3 personality traits or 3 talking points that you want your brand to exude, make sure you're hitting on that every time you post. As far as the look of your feed, it's going to depend on what those things are. If you want to be very professional, you want to be more corporate in your appearance, you're probably going to have more posts that are word heavy. You might have text posts that you design in Canva or things like that. If, on the other hand, you're really focused on reels, you're really focused on video content, you might have a feed that is a little bit more casual, where you're just sitting at your desk and the intro to the reel is just you sitting there, with a professional outfit on, or even like a picture of your desk if you want to break up having your face on there. So there's a lot of things you can do. And a really good idea is to start searching social, see what people you like are doing. If there are brands or firms that you kind of want to emulate, don't copy them, but take inspiration from what they're doing to try to create a similar vibe.
So we're getting into something that feels a little scary for tax and accounting folks. So there's a couple things. How do I actually create this content? So I'm going to go in two ways here. You had mentioned Canva, and that could be a nice, easy tool to design things. But how do I write a social post? Do I use tools like our AI tools to do it? Do I sit down? Like, how do I brainstorm where I should go? And then secondarily, I mean, if I'm now getting into video, because Reels and video is very popular, very shareable, that's a scary topic. Like, how do I develop concepts there as well?
Sure. So AI is great. I actually have been doing a lot of AI training for social specifically with our clients at Counting Works Pro. And what I do is I go through, I talk to them about their goals, then we create some prompts together that they can sort of tweak as they go. So usually I'll create like a 2 to 4 week content plan for them when I sit down with them and show them just how quickly AI can spit that out. It'll give them templates that they can use over and over and over. And if something does really well, they can just tweak that same concept and use it again the next month and the next month. So it's also honing in on what's going to work for you. Every social profile obviously is different. So if you want to show your face, you can. If you don't want to show your face, there are plenty of tax and accounting firms and other professionals who do completely faceless profiles where they use B-roll and they might post like a tax tip over something that seems unrelated, like a beautiful view of the ocean, and they might just post a tax tip over the top of it. You don't have to think outside the box, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. You don't have to sit there at a desk and show your face and just talk about taxes. There are a lot of different ways to post finance content that aren't dry and that aren't necessarily going to be exactly the same as everyone on YouTube is doing or everyone on Instagram is doing. So that's why I really recommend digging into and finding firms that you resonate with and trying to do things that kind of play off of what they're doing successfully.
So let's talk about a little bit of, I guess, how I'm developing a point of view and perhaps a script. So we often talk about niching, and then more importantly, niching, the difference between niching deep and niching down. Do you recommend on social, like targeting specific groups and making that, amplifying that message over and over again? Do you think you'll be more successful doing that, or trying to just throw it all out there, generalist kind of topics in my area to see what sticks? Who do you think will be more effective in gaining followers and perhaps, turning them into clients?
Generally speaking, you're going to have more success reaching people who actually want to buy your services if you're niching deep. You might get more followers by posting general tax content, but you're going to get more committed followers by niching really deep and getting those people who are truly interested in the services that you're providing. So, for example, if you're targeting, pediatric dentists, for example, you could create content geared around that. That's going to be something that pediatric dentists are really going to resonate with. You might get fewer followers, but they're going to be more engaged followers. And at the end of the day, with so many people buying followers and a lot of really big accounts getting, 0.5% engagement, what really matters is engagement. You could have 500,000 followers, but only 5 clients out of that, or you could have 5,000 followers and, 500 clients, because you're really niching deep and giving those people something that they want.
Right. And there's two ways to look at this too. So if you are already doing that in your practice, so the specific doctor, as we were saying, a different specific type of doctor, for example, I already have clients that are in that space. I'm already going to be able to follow them online. Hopefully they follow me back. If I'm putting in content that's already resonating with them, that should attract, and that signals to the algorithms, both the social algorithms and to Google. So how important is it, if I'm putting out these signals to Google that I am an expert in this vertical based on my social presence as well, is that going to help my actual website traffic and ranking?
It absolutely can. So I always say that social is an indirect ranking factor. It's not one of Google's official, 211 ranking factors, but it definitely plays a role, because if you have a TikTok video go viral, for instance, you're getting a lot of interest, right? People are clicking on your TikTok profile, which has your website listed. So then in turn, they are visiting your website. Google's going to notice that uptick in traffic, and automatically you're going to start gaining authority because suddenly you've got tons of people visiting your website based on a social post. Also, social SEO is a thing. So the more the words on your social profiles, whether they're in captions or they're in your little profile about us, the tiny little bio that you get, wherever you're putting terminology, make sure that you're using keywords that resonate with your website, because Google is going to connect those social profiles back to your website, back to any other form of media that you're using. So it's always good to think of keywords, to think of your target audience, and to think of your main website and the verbiage you're using there when you're creating social content.
So I think that leads me into hashtags. So people are pretty used to the pound sign in a word, a keyword, I would call it. But what exactly are hashtags, and how do they help amplify the messaging, and how do people find you because of hashtags on your social posts?
So hashtags kind of help categorize your posts. That's really the easiest way to think of it. It's almost like the Dewey Decimal System for the internet. So a hashtag is helping to categorize your post, to organize it with other posts like it. So another thing that hashtags are used for, in addition to someone just searching them to look for categorical content, they're used by the social algorithms to put things on discovery pages. So if you're familiar with Instagram, for example, a discovery page is where you would click and it's going to show you a lot of different videos, a lot of different posts that relate to things you're interested in. Hashtags are used to find that content. So the algorithm actually looks at hashtags to find things that you might be interested in. So make sure your hashtags make sense. Don't just use a bunch of trending things that don't really go together. Like if you see, orange juice is trending, don't tag your tax and accounting video with that just to get that trending hashtag out there. Make sure that you're using things like tax, personal finance, hashtag tax help can be a good one, hashtag tax tips, hashtag small business could work. So really think about what you're doing and create a hashtag cluster, not a content cluster, I'm sorry, but a hashtag cluster that works with that content. The more you do that, the better your content is going to resonate with people, and the more it's going to show up for the right types of people. Don't get discouraged. That's another big thing. It takes time and you never know what's going to take off. So just keep posting.
Yeah, there's a lawyer influencer that I follow just because they're very popular, and he's funny. He's very authentic, and he'll post him walking in parking lots of Target, and and he's an attorney, but he's actually getting a lot of clients from this approach. But what he said is, hey, I don't know what's going to hit and what's not going to hit. I might do 10 different concepts that I come up with, and I'll post them all. And the ones that get a lot of content, those are the ones I boost. Those are the ones I amplify and push out, whether that be advertising or other ways to share. So I find that kind of interesting. So we're kind of tying this together a little bit. Before I move too far into influencers, that's my next topic. I want to talk about, so we've said, okay, you can use AI to create your calendars. It can actually write your posts for you. You can use Canva to easily design things. You can create a template there. There's a couple things I want to warn people on. With any photography, you had mentioned, the ocean or seagulls or whatever flying in the backgrounds. 100% make sure that you have properly licensed these images. There's algorithms going out that are incorrectly, unfortunately, flagging both audios. So people license audio and or images. And the last thing you need is to get into and waste your time with an ambulance chasing algorithm law type of group. So it's a huge pain. Definitely make sure you have some pause there before you complete the actual, and then they'll get flagged. So, it happens all the time. Facebook false flags videos all the time because they say audio is not properly licensed. It's kind of I guess it's their way of dealing with AI and trying to protect their IP, but it's quite honestly a huge drain on you. So just be careful. So that's my little warning. So let's go into influencers, yes. and other brands and people that you should align with. So why would I do that? And if I don't want to necessarily be paying a bunch of people, but it's kind of scratch each other's back. So explain kind of how this networking effect works, and how if you create a I guess, a little army of people that will amplify your post, how then that spiders out and you get a lot more followers?
Yes. So working with other people on social, whether it's influencers or other business owners in your area who you collaborate with, is very, very important. On Instagram in particular, it's super easy to collaborate. When you create a reel, there's going to be a little toggle button that says, is this a collaboration? You're going to toggle it to yes, you're going to tag that other person, and it's going to show up on both their feed and yours. Instantly, with literally the click of a button, you have reached their audience as well as your own. Odds are those are going to be different people. I also want to talk about thinking outside the box a little bit when it comes to who you work with. For instance, if you specialize in restaurants, you work with restaurants, consider working with like local food micro influencers who visit restaurants in your area and post about them. You might not immediately think that they have a connection to tax and accounting, but think about their followers are going to be the restaurant owners who you want to reach. So really sit down and think about people who are maybe in more traditional influencing roles like lifestyle, food, retail, fashion, and how they could maybe help you reach people who are interested in your services by virtue of their following. A lot of people, especially local micro influencers, are very open to collaboration with minimal payment or sometimes trades for services. Like you could do their taxes perhaps in exchange for them promoting your video. There's a lot of different ways you can collaborate. So don't automatically assume that you're going to be out hundreds of dollars a post, because that's not necessarily the case. So reach out to people. Most people who do content creation on any level are checking their DMs regularly. They're very open to collaborating, especially with local people. So just go ahead and get out there and put your name out there, and don't be afraid. I tell our clients all the time, the worst they can say is no, right? And then you just move on to the next person. So there's really nothing to lose, and there's a lot to potentially gain.
So you talked about like finding influencers and thinking outside the box. How do I monitor all this? Is there certain analytics tools? What am I looking for to see, is this effort worth it? Am I getting an ROI just from an engagement standpoint? And then we're going to go into a little bit of the SEO and the marketing branding side in a second, but let's talk about analytics first.
Sure. So built-in analytics on social have gotten really good as influencers have kind of risen and there's become a whole industry surrounding collaboration and influencer marketing. The built-in analytics tend to be really good. You can build out your own contracts for when you work with another brand. Say it's another local business or an influencer, anyone like that. You can have a contract that requires them to provide you with their analytics as well as your own. If you do an actual collaboration on Instagram, for example, you will have access to all analytics for that video, both on their page and on yours, because they've accepted a collaboration with you. On TikTok, it's a little bit harder because there's not a true collaboration feature yet. So they would have to provide you with the analytics from the video on their page. You would obviously have access to the video on your page to see what happened. To figure out if you're actually getting conversions, there's a few things you can do. Unfortunately, it's not foolproof. It's a little bit of a gray area. The easiest way is probably just to ask any incoming client how they heard about your firm. They may very well say social media. Then you can kind of gauge how many people are seeing this content. Another option is that if you run an ad, so say you have a video that's doing well and you decide to boost it, like you mentioned, Lee, when you boost it and run it as an ad, you're going to have the opportunity to send people to a website if they click on that advertisement. You can send them to a landing page that was built specifically for that ad. And then any lead that comes through that landing page, you're going to know came from that video. So that's a pretty easy way to do it as well. And at ClientWorks, we build landing pages. So we have a pretty easy way to build out specific splash pages for clients who are interested in going that route and using social advertising to figure out who's viewing their reels.
All right. So let's kind of wrap this up a little bit. I have a final question, which is going to be the mistakes people that you've seen make. But let's talk about, we said there's an SEO reason. So there's so I'm going to go back. Our client base that is active or has a presence on social media, we have found a 10% traffic boost to their websites. So that's a significant number. It's not a rounding number. That's a big number. So for sure, people that are posting are getting inbound traffic to their brand and their site from that. So that's advantage number one. We're saying there are some SEO social proof signals to the algorithms, both internally on the social sites and to Google. We've said there's some social proof. So if I Google you and I see a beautiful website and I see you're active on social and you have a lot of content, I think that establishes you as an expert. Does any of this, or does this all go into kind of Google's algorithm with Eats and explain that side just a little bit? So I want people to understand this. It's not just the, I was at a shopping area or a brew pub that I go to, and across from it over the weekend, there's this little hole in the wall in like a manufacturing place, and it was a vintage photo booth. There were 150 people in line to go pay $5 to $10 to go into this photo booth. And I was talking to some younger people next to me, and I'm like, what is this? They're like, oh yeah, they're just on TikTok and they post, and now they have 3 of these, and they have lines like this every single weekend. They're printing money on a photo booth, a vintage photo booth. So we know that social works. There's brands all over the internet that have become brands purely because of social. But I want to get the accountant, the tax pro, to understand the value. So let's sell it a little bit.
Sure. So EAT, for just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know, EAT stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So it is very important in the tax and accounting space. Google tends to rank brands that are very well established, have a lot of web authority, higher when people search for finance related topics, health related topics. We call it your money, your life in the SEO industry. So anything that's related to those critical factors, Google really, really considers expertise and authority. So yes, to answer your question very briefly, Lee, social media is going to have an impact on your authority, because the more engagement you're getting there, as we already mentioned, the more traffic is getting driven to your website, and the more people are seeing your name and the more people are talking about you. So the more mentions you have across the web, the more Google's going to see that people are trusting your content, they're trusting what you have to say about this topic, whether it's taxes or bookkeeping or whatever your niche happens to be, whatever service you're pushing. Google's going to see that. The algorithm's going to pick up on it. Over time, you're going to see yourself rise in authority. You're going to see yourself ranking higher and possibly even ranking for more terms. Because if you're posting things to social that maybe aren't heavily covered on your website, you can start ranking for search terms related to those things as opposed to just the copy that's on your service pages on your site. So it has a huge impact. The more you can do on social, the better off you're going to be in the long run. It's something that tax and accounting people definitely need to be doing because, like I said, authority matters more for you than it does for a clothing store. Google needs to know that you're trustworthy, and the more people online trust you, the more Google's going to trust you.
And I think that's an excellent point. And I find pros who struggle to get found, to find clients online, the biggest challenge for them, or the biggest things that they're doing wrong, is they're not on social. They don't have reviews. They're not getting themselves out there. They think they put up a website, a static website, and say, okay, work the SEO. And it's just not the way it works. It is an algorithm that's looking for these signals and looking at your competitors and saying, is this person more trustworthy? Are they showing themselves more? Do they have more followers? Are they more popular? These are all signals that are going to dictate whether you rank on page 1 or page 5. And you can throw up your arms and say, well, SEO doesn't work and blah, blah, blah. 100% it does, but you're not doing the things that you need to feed that algorithm to make it happy. So, which leads me into my last one, which is, what are some common mistakes that you see tax and accounting firms making on social media, and then how can they avoid them?
Sure. So the biggest thing I see is inconsistent posting. I'll talk to clients who are like, I have social, and I'm like, oh, great. When was the last time you posted? Oh, 3 months ago. Consistent posting is really important. It plays into your authority, and it also plays into engagement. Followers are more likely to continue following you if you're putting out good content on a regular basis. Multiple times a week is best, but even once a week, don't go fewer than once a week. Don't post fewer than one time a week, because then you're going to start losing people's interest, right? Like, they're not going to trust you if you're only posting once every 3 to 6 months. There's no reason for them to follow you. You have to give people a reason to want to be there. So consistent posting, and a really great way to combat that is to use AI to create a posting calendar, get it to spit out image suggestions, caption suggestions, and sit down on a Saturday afternoon and spend an hour scheduling your social for the next month. You only have to do it, once a month. It's a good thing to do. Just get in a routine of scheduling out your social posts, once a month, once every 2 weeks, whatever works for your schedule. Another thing I see is copying content exactly. You don't want to copy exactly what someone else is doing because they're already doing it and they already have the authority in that area with that exact post. So if you see something you love, take inspiration from it and make it your own, but don't copy the precise caption. Don't copy the precise thing. Trending is a little different. If there's like a trending reel that you want to use, that can be kind of a gray area, a little bit different because you're using your own footage with a caption that's gone viral, that type of thing. But if you're just doing a post, don't take the exact same tip that someone posted yesterday in your same city and post it today. Kind of think original thoughts and come up with things that are going to reach your audience, not their audience, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And the trending thing definitely works where, there might be a specific kind of theme or meme type, and you can do versions of it or different backgrounds, and you can use the same copy. And I've seen that go, it just amplifies it. It becomes a trending item and it lasts a week or two, but it's definitely something where you could get some activity going on that. So I think we've covered this fairly well. We've gone through how to create your own content, how to set up your profiles, how to brand yourself, use political campaign-like talking points, meaning, talk about just a very few issues, niche yourself deep where you're an expert on something very specific. You might have a narrower audience, but the reality is they'll be much more engaged, much more loyal. They'll build a community. I always call it, there's an example is water polo. My daughter plays water polo. She is a girls team, so we're into girls water polo, and there are specific areas where there are really engaged follower groups that are all into that. I've taken it a step further into left-handed players and people that talk about left-handed players. And that is incredibly engaging. It's a smaller audience, but what I'm getting at is you'll have a lot more loyal people. They have people amplifying your posts a lot more. And what you're trying to do is, again, you're building expertise, you're building trustworthiness. When someone is referred to you and they Google you, they may not have picked you because of your social media, but they might clicked on your social media just to back up what you're saying on your website, or other people glowing about you, or other people on your threads, communicating and going back and forth. Those are things that are going to help you convert more people. It's going to be that one call close versus if they see bad things, they don't even make a phone call, right? So I think that's great. Is there anything I missed, Rebekah, that you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
No, I feel like we hit on everything that was really critical. So happy posting, everyone.
Yes. So we have a lot of fun things in our upcoming calendar for our podcast. So a lot of exciting things. We're going to be playing a lot on AI and learning what AI agents are in the future. So please bookmark us, follow us, and get ready for it. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, you can always visit our countingworkspro.com website. If you have questions about specific products or actually how to get social media going, we have a marketing concierge. Rebekah leads that as the chief visibility officer. And we are basically like a mini ad agency. So we're really good at getting you online and ranking well. So it's definitely something to look at. So we hope you enjoyed this podcast. We hope to see you at another one, and we'll hope you have a wonderful the rest of the week. Thank you.